Welcome to another exciting adventure in Joe Knows How to Tangle. And today we're going to do an ox. And this is because we are celebrating the Chinese New Year on February 2nd. And here is one example of what you can do with the ox. I turned him into a New Year card. Here is an ox done on a Zentangle tile. Here's an ox just done on a watercolor background. Here is an ox that would be suitable for framing. I mean, what home would not welcome someone bringing an ox like this in a frame? I can't imagine. And here's another ox as a greeting card. Now, as I was working on this, I started looking at the ox and thinking, gosh, that looks like a bull to me. So I looked it up. And in just a second, I'm going to tell you the difference between an ox and a bull. But first, I'm going to show you how you can draw your very own, yes, your very own oxen. If you go to my Facebook page, Joanna's Readers, there's a file with this ox in it. You will download that file and print it out. When you get done printing it out, on the back side, you're going to color it in with a crummy pencil. And that's pretty crummy, but this one's crummy and more suitable. Color it in. As you can see, I really like to color it in a lot. I color it in one way, I color it in that way. And then you put your oxen colored side down on the piece of paper you want to tangle on. You follow the curves of the oxen with your pencil. And you need a pencil with somewhat of a point, because what you're basically doing is you have turned the back of this, that black background with all the pencil marks on it, into carbon paper. And now, using your pencil, or you could use a pen too with a sharp point, you are transferring that carbonized paper, that carbon, not the carbonized paper, the carbon, to a secondary piece of paper. Some of you might be old enough to remember carbon paper. I sure am. It was messy stuff. And admittedly, this can be a little bit of a messy process, but it's a lot better for most people than drawing that animal freehand, which is what I did. Did I get the tail? I always seem to forget his tail when I do this. Tale of two cities, or one. Now I'm going to lift it up and ta-da! You can see my ox. This is a good time to go in and clean up the ox a little if you want to. I see I missed a little spot there, but for the most part, he's in pretty good shape. I do want to give him kind of a plumy tail, so I'm going to draw that in. I promised you that I would tell you, okay, now that you have the transfer in pencil, you want to ink the transfer because otherwise the pencil will smear on you. I told you that I would tell you the difference between an ox and a bull. And I want you to know that I looked this up because I was curious. I've traced this about 5 different times and worked on this about 5 different times. I kept thinking to myself, gosh, this sure looks like a bull to me. I don't see why this would be an ox. And that made me think, you know how you call people a big ox? Well, what exactly is an ox? What were we calling people when we called them a big ox? Well, as it turns out, bull and an ox is the same animal. The only difference is the bull has not been castrated and the ox has been. Isn't that fascinating? That's not exactly something you'll probably want to share at dinner, but I mean, I'm all about lifelong learning. And believe me, this project has been lifelong learning. Because as I said before, I think I've videoed this about 5 different times. One of those times, I've since discovered, the camera wasn't running. Yeah, let's see here. you'll notice I flipped this around. That's one of the things that Tangle has taught me to do, and that is to flip my art around, because sometimes I need it going the other way. Ta-da! So now I have traced the ox. I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase my pencil marks. I'm using this soft eraser, and what I want you to notice is that I'm erasing in a circular motion, and I'm also using my left hand to hold the paper down securely. Otherwise, it's really easy to rip your paper. I'm also holding the eraser in such a way that I'm using the flat part of it. My dog is sneezing in the background. I'm using the flat part to erase. Okay, and now you can see that's an inked outline of an ox. Got a little dark belly there. Alrighty. Now in Tangle, we typically divide our project into areas by using strings. And I'm going to do that right now. There. My ox now has a variety of portions for me to work with. He has the flank, he has the midsection, the forward section, tails, head, you name it. I've divided the ox, because I guess this guy is not a bull, into sections. And we're going to fill these sections with Tangle patterns. And here are the patterns that I have chosen for today. Enzapel, Printemps, and Tidings. And now I'm going to show you how those patterns work. Enzapel starts with a grid. I think I better switch to the darker pen so you can see it more clearly. Starts with a grid, and then diagonal lines in that grid. Then you go back and turn each of those diamonds into a triangle, and I suggest that you don't go from left to right, that you do each triangle separately, because sometimes if you go left to right, you make a mistake, or you kind of, if your grid isn't just perfect, you're going to have a problem. I think I have a red pen in here. If not, I guess I will use a brown one, because I want you to see the color difference. What you're going to do is you're going to fill these triangles, these diamonds, with water balloons. Now you don't want to go all the way to the points of the diamonds, of those triangles. You want to keep your water balloons inside. And if you have a partial, it's up to you whether you want to change the shape of the water balloon, or if you want it to just end, because maybe there's an imaginary end there. And you keep on filling this with water balloons. Now, Enzapel is one of those tangles that's kind of magical, because when you look at it, it doesn't look very attractive. But when you put it in a string or a pattern, it takes on a whole different look, doesn't it? Now, granted, this is smaller than what I did here, but this is still Enzapel. Here's another example of Enzapel. See? Isn't that neat? The next pattern we're going to do is Printemps. And Printemps, of course, is Italian for spring. And there are two ways to do Printemps. There's the open Printemps, which is basically like a snail shell. And then there's your closed Printemps. And for this pattern, for this project, I'm using closed Printemps. They remind me of little cinnamon rolls. So think about making cinnamon rolls on your paper, and remember that with Tangle, you always go behind whatever else you drew. So you're going to kind of layer these little cinnamon buns in. Okay? And then the last one is tidings. And tidings might be new to you. It was kind of new to me, but I like it. Tidings starts with an S shape with a little kind of dot at each end. You could even think of it as a comma, 2 commas joined together. And then you go back and you aura tidings. You do another aura. That wasn't a very good aura, was it? Kind of messed up. Except there are no mistakes in Zentangle, only creative opportunities. Frankly, that doesn't feel like a creative opportunity. And when you've decided that you want to, you can add another S shape. You can put it behind that one if you want. I did a variation of tidings. I did it with just a half of a tidings. Maybe that's just a tide. And there's probably a name for this tangle, but I couldn't tell you what it is. And I kind of like it this way because you can make it fit in a smaller space if you want. Now in this case, it kind of wound up like a tree all coming out of one of them, but I could also do it this way where I have one and I aura it and I do another aura. I don't know if aura is a verb, I doubt it. And then I can bring one out from here so it's kind of at a right angle, and that's probably more interesting than having it look like a tree. So I'm sure this has a name other than tide, as in just part of tidings. I think of these as little golf clubs. Yeah. But that's our third tangle. So we've got Enzapel, Printemps, and tidings. And now I'm going to let the dog out.